The year is 1999. A group of French archaeologists, they're deep inside the Po Klong Garai Tower in southern Vietnam. Now you have to picture this. It hasn't rained, there's no river, no well, no water source anywhere near this place. And yet, water is trickling down from the eye sockets of a stone statue, a statue that's been sitting right there for 800 years. One of the archaeologists, he reaches out, touches the water, it's real. And the local Cham people, they're watching from the doorway, and they're not surprised at all. They just say, the god is crying. He is happy we came. What the scientists found when they tried to explain this, well, it's one of the strangest rabbit holes in the entire history of archaeology. And it leads us to a civilization that has been hiding its secrets in plain sight for 1,500 years. All right, so let's get one thing straight right away. We are not talking about some small, isolated tribe here. Champa was a major civilization. I mean, they were a contemporary and a serious rival to the famous Khmer Empire over at Angkor Wat. I mean, just look at this timeline. We're talking about a kingdom that lasted for 1,500 years. That's longer than the Roman Empire. At their peak, Champa controlled a massive 1,200 kilometers of coastline along what we now call central Vietnam. That put them in charge of the incredibly important spice trade routes between Imperial China, India, and all the way to the Middle East. And what's so fascinating is who they were. The Cham, they're an Austronesian people, so ethnically they're actually more closely related to Malays, Filipinos, even people in Madagascar, than they are to their immediate neighbors, the Vietnamese or the Khmer. These were master seafarers who basically sailed to mainland Asia and built an empire from the coast. They traded in these unbelievably valuable goods, like agarwood, which in Tang Dynasty China was literally worth 10 times its weight in gold. And their religion, it was this incredible, unique fusion of Indian Shivism, so worship of the Hindu god Shiva, and their own ancient local beliefs. Which of course brings us to the big question. You've got over 70 major temple complexes still standing. So why is Champa basically a historical footnote for most people? Well, there are a few reasons. First, they didn't leave a whole lot of written history behind themselves. A lot of what we know comes from their enemies, actually. Second, their story was pretty much written by the people who conquered them, the Dai Viet. But the third reason, and this is the most important one for us, is that their most important knowledge, all their spiritual and engineering secrets, was never, ever written down. It was deliberately kept secret, passed down only by word of mouth from a master to their apprentice for centuries. And to even begin to understand those secrets, you have to start with this one single concept. It's the most important idea in their entire worldview. It shapes everything, their religion, their architecture, even their politics. And that concept is called Yang. Now, Yang isn't a specific god with a name and a face, like Zeus or someone. Think of it more like a sacred, living, divine energy that can be invited to come and live in a place, an object, or a building. So for the Cham, these towers aren't just symbolic temples. No, they are literally living homes for this divine energy. And here's the crucial part. Yang can be offended. It can get angry. It can actually pack up and leave if it isn't treated with the proper respect and the correct rituals. Their whole culture revolves around keeping the Yang happy.
Okay, and this is the part that stops being philosophy and becomes engineering. The Cham didn't just believe their towers were sacred, they built them to be sacred, from the foundation up. And buried inside the base of every single tower is something that archaeologists found and still cannot fully explain.
It's the exact same idea with their ancestors. They have another concept called Kut, which are the spirits of their ancestors. And as the great Cham scholar Sakawaya puts it, the Cham do not fear the dead, they fear the displeased dead. Just like with Yang, you have to house and care for the spirits of your ancestors correctly, or they're gonna cause all sorts of problems for you. It's all about maintaining that proper relationship. And that relationship starts right at the beginning. When excavators opened the foundation of a Cham tower for the very first time, they found a sealed golden box. Inside, seeds, sacred water, incense, a gemstone, and a rolled-up piece of gold leaf covered in Sanskrit text. Now, this box was designed to never be opened again. It was a message sealed into the foundation, not for humans, but for the god. This is the Kosa box. And you should think of it as a kind of universe in miniature, buried right at the heart of the foundation. So before even one brick is laid, the priests place these items inside. Each one represents a core element. Earth is there in the form of sacred seeds, water from a holy river. Fire is represented by coals from a ritual pyre. Air is there as fragrant incense. And the fifth element, space or ether, is represented by a gemstone. And finally, the message, prayers, carefully inscribed on a sheet of pure gold. By burying this, they are ritually activating the ground. They are inviting yang into the building, creating this cosmic anchor that turns a pile of bricks into a living, sacred being. Okay, so that brings us right back to where we started, the weeping statues. So there are 3 possible explanations for why the statues cry. The first is the one scientists prefer, the second is the one the Cham won't prefer, and the third, the one nobody really talks about, is that both might be right at the same time. And that is the one that should make you stop and think. All right, let's look at the scientific view first. This is material science problem, plain and simple. The bricks the Cham made were totally unique. They're highly porous and what's called hygroscopic, which basically means they're like sponges for air moisture. So the theory goes that when you get a big shift in temperature and humidity, like when the cool, dark tower is opened up to the warm, humid air for a festival, condensation happens. Water that's been absorbed into the stone gets released, and because of how the face is carved, it drips from the eyes. It's a predictable physical phenomenon.
But that doesn't explain everything, does it? The physics explains the how, but it doesn't explain the why or the when. Why does it happen so reliably on the exact same festival days every year, like the Big Lake Hate Festival? Why not on any other random humid day? The Cham people will even agree with the physics, but for them, the real question is what causes it. They believe the ritual is the trigger. The presence of all the people, the chanting, the offerings, that's what summons the emotion of the yang, which then shows itself physically. For the Cham, the why is always, always more important than the how.
And this is where the anthropologist Andrew Hardy just offers this brilliant take on it all. He says we're asking the wrong question. It's not about trying to prove or disprove a miracle. The real question is, why do the Cham need a statue that can cry? And the answer is that it's this powerful form of spiritual confirmation. It's a direct, physical sign from the divine that their prayers have been heard, that their God is right there and is emotionally responding to them. It reinforces the very faith that holds their entire community together. It's not a hoax, it's a vital spiritual mechanism. Now, the weeping statues are strange, I'll give you that. But they are not the strangest thing about these Cham towers, not by a long shot. The strangest thing is what holds the towers together. After 1,000 years of analysis, modern material science still cannot identify the binding agent between the bricks. There is no mortar, there is no cement. The bricks are just together. And the Cham explanation for this is going to make you uncomfortable. I mean, this is genuinely baffling from an engineering standpoint. You literally cannot slip a razor blade between these bricks. The seams are perfect, and they've stayed that way through 1,000 years of monsoons, wars, and total neglect. What is holding them together?
It's really one of the great unsolved mysteries of ancient architecture. People have been trying to figure this out for more than a century.
And they have tested everything. Look at this list. They analyzed for resin from local dowd trees. Couldn't find a trace. They looked for the chemical signature of sugarcane, which was used in other ancient mortars. Nope, nothing. Plant-based oils? No evidence. There was even this wild theory that they somehow built the tower with wet, unfired bricks and then cooked the entire structure in place like a giant kiln, fusing them together. But the physics of that just don't work. The thing would collapse under its own weight. Even with modern spectrography, the answer is still inconclusive. We just don't know. And then you ask the Cham elders, and their oral tradition has a very simple answer. Yang holds the bricks together. They believe that after the Kosa box is buried and the right rituals are performed, that divine energy, the yang, literally infuses the building materials and fuses them together. Now, from our scientific perspective, that sounds like a religious fable. But from their perspective, it's not a fable. It's the technical explanation. For the Cham, the spiritual ritual is the engineering. You can't separate the two. And this might be the most urgent part of this whole story. It isn't the mysteries we've already uncovered. It's the ones we are on the verge of losing forever. Every time a senior Basinate priest dies without a fully trained successor, a piece of knowledge that took 15 centuries to build just disappears. We are watching a library burn in slow motion, in real time. To put this into perspective for you, this is the entire population of Cham people living in Vietnam today, about 160,000. An entire 1,500-year-old civilization is now being carried forward by a community smaller than the city of Springfield, Illinois. And their most sacred knowledge is held by just a tiny fraction of that population, the priests, who are known as the Basai, and the ritual musicians, the Kadar. For 15 centuries, all of this knowledge, the thousands of chants, The precise steps for every single ritual, the techniques for inviting young, has been passed down only by word of mouth, from master to apprentice, in total secrecy. Nothing is written down. That's protected their secrets, but it also makes them incredibly fragile. As the scholar Sakaya warns, when one of these masters dies, we are losing, quote, an irreplaceable living library. A whole wing of human knowledge just vanishes.
You know, if this conversation has made you want to go deeper, and I genuinely hope it has, the single best starting point is Sakaya's Le Hoi Kungue Cham, for any Vietnamese readers, and George Mospero's Le Royaume de Champa for those who read French. Both are available through major academic libraries and online archives. The story of Champa really deserves a much wider readership than it has.
Which brings us to this final thought from the anthropologist Andrew Hardy. He writes, "The question is not whether Yang is real. The question is, without Yang, would the Cham still exist today?"